Hi guys, today I want to talk about 4 Native American stories that probably inspired George to create Lyanna and Rhaegar's tragic love story. Adding 2 more would complete Rhaegar's storyline, but I want to focus more on Lyanna today and possibly finish Rhaegar's in my next video. Before I get into those myths and legends of Native Americans, I want to point out a few things about Lyanna and Rhaegar. We know that Lyanna was betrothed to Robert Baratheon, and she's often associated with blue winter roses. Lyanna was not kidnapped by Rhaegar. In reality, she had willingly eloped with him, and they were married in South Endor. Lyanna gave birth to Jon Snow at the Tower of Joy, and the last family member who saw her alive was her brother Ned Stark. Prince Rhaegar loved his silver-stringed harp, and he was murmuring a woman's name as he was dying at the Battle of Trident, and many assumed that the name was Lyanna. In the pilot episode of Game of Thrones Season 1, we saw Robert Baratheon placing a feather on Lyanna's statue, but if you're a book reader, you probably noticed that this feather part is not in the book. I think this is the one thing that George debated over and over whether to include it or not, but for the whole composition's sake, he eventually decided to drop it. But then, when Game of Thrones was adapted for TV, he saw the chance and might have talked with the showrunners and asked them to edit. As far as I know, the pilot episode was not written by George himself, but I think Benioff and D.B. Weiss are pretty well aware of the following myths and legends I'll be introducing in a minute. Now here are the 4 Native American myths and legends that might have been the inspiration for Lyanna and Rhaegar's love story. I'm going to give you a brief summarization of each. Lily Now, the Fairy Girl. Lily Now was a lovely Indian girl who loved to dance under the moonlight in a pine grove by the shore of the lake. And so she was dancing in the pine grove one night, but her mother told her she better not to, because under the silver moon, the fairies, or the little people, would come out and carry away dancing maidens. Summer after summer, on moonlit nights, Lily Now could hear the fairies sing, and in the morning she could see the tiny footprints in the sand dunes by the lake, and she longed to see the fairies and visit the beautiful fairyland that was always warm. Now, on one summer day, a handsome brave came to woo Lily Now, and on the wedding day, her mother dressed her for the ceremony. But Lily Now sighed and wept. She begged that she needed to visit the pine grove once more before she became a bride. Her mother said yes, and Lily Now went out to the pine grove alone, but only to never come back. The last person who saw her was a fisher lad who watched Lily Now dancing with a bright fairy chief in the pine grove by the shore of the lake. The Legend of the Violet. There was a young warrior who happened to fall in love with one of the maidens in his enemy's camp. He would hide in the woods to watch the maiden, whose eyes softened his heart, and sing her praises, and murmur her name in his sleep. And he finally decided to go woo the maiden in a lodge, and he carried her off upon his shoulder. But the maiden already had a suitor, and when her suitor saw this, he did not follow them, because he was a coward. Instead, he fled to the village and gave the alarm. Leaving the coward in the hands of women, the braves from the village started to chase down the maiden and her lover, followed them all through the night, and as the morning dawned, they found them in the forest. And they saw her hair plaited about the neck of the warrior to show that she was a willing captive and had given him her heart. Then her people, enraged at the foe for his daring, and the maiden because she deserted her tribe, killed them both in the forest, and left their bodies lying where they fell. And from that spot in the forest sprang up the first blue violets. Anya, the Rose Flower. Once in the forest there was this spring with magical power, watched over by 2 spirits. Osweda, the spirit of the spruce tree, guarded the spring from sunrise until noon. During those hours, all who drank of its water were cured of sickness and filled with joy. But when the slanting shadow of the afternoon touched the spring, Okudua the bat watched over the spring, and under his watch the water became poisonous, killing all men and animals that drank of it. One summer morning, Anya the Rose Flower went to the spring to fetch water. There she wove baskets, sang the firefly song by the spring, but she forgot the passing hours and did not see the slanting shadow of afternoon nearing the spring. When she plunged the bowl to the water, something held the bowl fast, and the beautiful face of a youth smiled from the water, and wooed the maiden with the enchanting smile. But when the slanting shadow of the afternoon touched the spring, Okudulabet swooped down and seized Anya the Rose Flower. Then it took her down beneath the earth, where witches were dancing round the flame, and then she fainted. Basically, she had a near-death experience there. When she opened her eyes, it was a sunrise, and there a young warrior stood in front of her, with a branch of spruce tree in his hand, and two wings on his head, one of the eagle and the other of the owl. And she realized that the face of the warrior was the beautiful youth that smiled at her from the spring. And the warrior explained that he's Usweda, the spirit of the spruce tree, and that he's the one who snatched her from the fire dance of the witches, and with the healing power of the spring at sunrise had caused her to open her eyes. When she heard all of this, her heart was filled with joy, and then she headed home. But as day by day passed, Anya the Rose Flower faded. When her lodge was empty, her people found two fallen feathers where Anya had once lain. One was of the eagle, and the other of the owl. Star Bride. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful Indian girl named Feather Woman. She thought the morning star in the sky was so beautiful, she loved it with all her heart, and told everyone that she would never marry anybody except the morning star. Everyone mocked and laughed at her. One early morning, Feather Woman went alone to the river to fetch some water, and saw a bright youth standing in the river path. He smiled and said, "Feather Woman, I'm the morning star. I've come to carry you back with me to my dwelling." And he took her to the skyland and to the house of his parents, the sun and the moon. And they were married, and had a son, and named him Star Boy. One day the moon gave Feather Woman a root digger, and told her she could go anywhere about the skyland and dig up all kinds of roots except the great turnip, for if she did so, unhappiness would come to them all. But she was so overcome by curiosity, she uprooted the great turnip with the help of two large cranes. And she looked down through the hole where the turnip had been, and far below she saw the camp of the Blackfeet where she used to live. She was filled with homesickness and started to weep. The sun and the moon had no choice but to send her back to the earth for her disobedience. So the morning star sadly took Feather Woman and little boy upon her shoulder, and led them to the Spider-Man, who lived in the skyland. Then the Spider-Man wove a web through the hole made by the great turnip, and led Feather Woman and her child down to the earth. She and the boy were welcomed by her folks, and loved by them. But Feather Woman was unhappy, because she longed to return to the skyland and see the morning star. But her longings were in vain, and soon her unhappy life was ended. So those are the four stories of four different tribes that Lyanna and Rhaegar story is based on. Actually, there are two more stories that have to be added to this repertoire for Rhaegar and his name, but I want to save them for my next video. I'm up to like 75% complete with my research at this moment, and there are no other characters in Song of Ice and Fire. Like it has these many legends and myths for their story base as Lyanna and Rhaegar do. Their story is based on 6 different folklores. Let me draw some parallels here. First 2 stories are all about a girl who was already betrothed to someone. Lily now was betrothed to a handsome brave. The enemy's maiden already had a suitor, the coward, and when the braves of her village started to chase her and her lover, they left the coward in the hands of women. And Blue Roses. I think George actually combined these 2 stories, Anya the Rose Flower and the Legend of the Violet, to come up with Blue Roses. Anya the Rose Flower does not specify any color of rose, but the violet is definitely blue, so combining the 2 is possible to come up with Blue Roses. I looked up the war paint and the meanings of colors in Native American symbolism. there's not much to blue there. Blue only symbolizes wisdom and confidence. I guess that can really describe Lyanna's character as well, but I think for Lyanna, George used the meanings of blue roses in general. Blue roses cannot be achieved naturally, so they represent the unattainable or the mysterious. And come to think of it, a lot of people believe that Lyanna was the mysterious knight of the Laughing Tree who fought at the tourney at Harrenhal, and she was someone who was unattainable for Robert Baratheon, and blue roses also embody love at first sight. I think for Lyanna and Rhaegar, it was definitely love at first sight. Yeah, I think I can say that. Now that we know that Lyanna was not kidnapped by Rhaegar, instead they were in love and ran off together, which is the case for the second story, the maiden who had plaited her hair about the neck of the enemy warrior as a sign of being a willing captive and having given him her heart. And just like Robert's rebellion, all the braves from her tribe came out to find that alleged abductor and the maiden. But just like in Song of Ice and Fire, both the maiden and her lover were in love and died like Lyanna and Rhaegar did. It was actually the girl who wanted to get away from the given reality. It was Lily now who wanted to visit the fairyland, the place that was always warm. And like the magic spring that had healing property and giving joy to people, Lyanna gave birth to our star boy Jon Snow at the Tower of Joy. And the last person who saw Lyanna alive was Ned Stark. And Ned married a Tully whose sigil is a silver trout, so he's like the official lad who last saw Lily now with the fairy chief. Or he can be the Spidey in the Skyland, who wove the web to let Feather Woman and Star Boy down to the earth to her hometown. And Rhaegar is, I think Targaryens are like God, and their Vestars are like demigods, like Hercules and Achilles. I'm talking about Jon Snow and Jaime Lannister. The thing is, Rhaegar in Native American legends aforementioned is all like fairy chief in fairyland, the spirit of the spruce tree and the morning star. He's rarely a human. If he is, he's a warrior. Other times, he's a fairy or spirit with lots of silver involved, like Silver Moon, and you will see more silver and red connection with Rhaegar in my next video. Anyway, I think George has given Rhaegar a silver-stringed harp instead of a branch of spruce tree in his hand, and the feather thing is definitely about the Feather Woman and Anya the Rose Flower. When Anya faded, there were a couple of feathers on the place where she had lain, and the Feather Woman was married to the Morning Star. And I made a connection between the Morning Star symbol and Lyanna in one of my videos, pointing out that Lyanna had to die like a girl sacrifice in the Morning Star ceremony. In the Winterfell crypt, Robert Baratheon said Lyanna belonged to somewhere in the hill with the sun and clouds above her. And Ned replied she wanted to come home. The Feather Woman's father-in-law was the sun, and she came back to the Blackfeet camp because she got homesick. And because of the homesickness, she did not last long. And would it be too far-fetched if I say Lyanna's name is from Anya and Lily now, like Li overlapping na? I don't think so. I think you'll probably somewhat agree with me if you see where Rhaegar's name came from in my next video, or I don't know, maybe it's just me who think it that way. What do you guys think? Please comment below what you guys think of all this. And my next video will be about Native American legends that might have been the inspiration for Rhaegar's storyline, of course his name and his possible resurrection. Okay, that's my Clapazoo episode for today. Thank you so much for watching and hope you guys will be back for more. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!